If you think about the environment we've just talked about, which is the pace of the environment, the complexity, what are some of the consistent themes and challenges you're addressing when you're advising HR leaders specifically?
I was going to say there's a couple things that jump to the top of the list. One, really shaping the talent strategy because it's constantly evolving. Not only are we, ensuring that we have the right people at the right time for today, but with everything that's changing from a technology impact and otherwise, we know there's so much that we need to start investing in now in shaping the talent of the future. And so talent being kind of the capital T at the top of that list that I think many HR leaders are accountable for, but also navigating as that landscape changes. Secondly, it's shaping the employee experience, right? When we think about a collection of individuals with many strengths, as HR leaders, we're always thinking about how do we make sure there are no barriers for them to bring their best to the environment day to day. The reality is motivations are changing. The expectations of what a colleague might have of an organization shifts, being able to really look at the experience end to end and really operationalize what will effectively allow people to contribute, I think is a second area. Lastly, I would say culture. And I know the adage is what culture eats strategy alive. The reality is also evolving the culture, right, is important. And I think as we were noting in the last point of discussion, HR needs to do that with others, right? So when we think about their ability to have a compelling message, to bring people along that change curve in support of the people, strategy, and agenda, I think that's a unique element of their role as well. So probably a lot more than you asked for there, Bill, but a few thoughts that came to mind.
Kim?
I think influence is so critical. I think it's, the opportunity, as everyone's talked about in terms of the strategy and the talent and all of those pieces. But I mean, you can be brilliant and a brilliant strategist, but if you really don't have the ability to influence, which I think is so critical to the HR role, and I think really you need to be the trusted advisor on people issues. You can't just be a voice around the table. I think it's a really important role relative to being that person that the leadership team really respects and defers to on those types of issues. So how does that HR leader really build that rapport, that trust, be able to keep confidences, because that's so critical, right? How do you deliver tough feedback in a way that doesn't damage the relationship? You can't just be the person who sits around the table, observes all of this, but isn't a part of helping to resolve it. If you're going to be one of the CEO's critical team members, but also advisors, you have to be someone who can work behind the scenes on a lot of these things that are getting in the way of this leadership team operating well together. So I think that's an important part of it. I think successfully assessing and integrating talent is such a key deliverable. So how do they help do that? It's still a little more of an art than it's going to be a science. And so how do we kind of work through those pieces? Almost all the HR executives that I speak with, this is a big piece of what they're trying to deliver. And there's still a little bit of catch up. How do you look at, accurately assessing the potential to be a leader or the potential to just continue being bench strength in the organization, looking at the growth? And I think this is really where Crenshaw excels. Both their tools and their coaches and advisors have just such great expertise in this area.
I would probably just add the idea of judgment, right? Like, how do we help HR executives sharpen their judgment? So having even a broader toolkit of whether it's through reading, whether it's through socializing ideas, whether it's by active learning of digital, like all of these things will help sharpen that judgment, I think, which, especially as they lead these multi-generational workforces where the line between what's professional and personal has become very blurry now, right? And, people want to bring their whole self to the workplace. And so then that whole thing comes with some consequences at times. So I think having sound judgment is probably a theme that I see a lot.